Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Institute for Personal Development, Kriya Yoga Ashram, where total consciousness is the new frontier.
Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices to initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's Talk Consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
Well, I'm doing great today, too. Thanks for asking, and thank you all for tuning in. Today on the Voice of Yoga, we will talk about the negative ramifications of wishing good luck and how to overcome the temptation. Listen as we explain the limitations of believing in two powers and how this behavior prevents spiritual law. In this show, we will discuss the two-part process of rejecting the false and affirming the truth. If we understood the control of mind over body, we should put no faith in material means. Mary Baker Eddy. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. Join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and channel the divine creation. Swami, the title of today's show is Educating Up to Spiritual Apprehension. And kind of hoping that maybe you could explain what we mean by that title.
Yeah, we're talking about having awareness for the divine creation. My experience was I had no idea about this divine creation. And then when you start to first hear about it, you really had to start to educate yourself up to what we're saying, spiritual apprehension. Life is perfect. Only what we're looking at isn't what Scripture calls life at all. And so here, that's what we're trying to do with these shows, is educate people. What we're calling life isn't life, and the faculty that we're using to justify or determine or evaluate what we're calling life doesn't go far enough. And so there's this process of educating thought up to apprehending the truth of being, the divine creation.
So let's start with what we have in the very first line of our summary. Let's talk about the negative ramifications of wishing good luck and how to overcome this temptation. Because I know it's really easy for us to say, well, good luck with this today, good luck with that. Let's talk about why we shouldn't use the word good or luck.
Wishing seems to be a way of accepting the false human concept of creation, which believes in two powers. It's a mix of good and bad, and it's a denial of the perfect divine creation of absolute good. So wishing here suggests divine goodness is a power to overcome bad, but in the knowledge of the divine creation, there is no bad. And so-called bad is only the human concept accepted and believed in. And so for me, the temptation is always falling back into the default reflex response is to wish people good luck rather than to know the truth, which is only spirit, only the divine creation is present and it's perfect.
So if I understand you correctly, there is no good luck, there is no bad luck, because if we believe in this divine creation, everything would be perfect. We wouldn't have this duality of good and bad.
Right. And that's why we have to educate our thought up to apprehending that. Because what we're experiencing in our material senses at corporeal sense level is a mix of good and evil. It's duality. And so we have to be taught that that isn't true, that that's not the real. And what is real doesn't report in your material sense mind and to start with that as a way of shifting your awareness from the testimony of your senses and then believing in the divine creation, but not just denying the testimony of your senses, but understanding spirit is a demonstrable principle. It's a law. And that if you have awareness of it and fidelity to it, it will actually start to change what is appearing in your material senses.
What are your recommendations that we say if we want to support somebody in whatever endeavor they're about to embark on? What could we say instead of saying good luck?
Well, what I've been doing is I try to recondition myself with, rather than saying good luck, which is the reflex response, you could just say good fortune, divine will, only good is. Rather than reinforcing the belief there is the possibility of bad luck, we're just polarizing on the simple fact life is perfect.
So I just want to make a distinction about, you use the word good twice, but I see you probably mean it with the word good is capitalized, meaning divine or from God.
That's a big part of this educating thought up to spiritual apprehension. Even say, for example, words like awake, rise, know, let are more of the terms we use to acknowledge the divine creation. But first we must give up the belief in the false human recreation. And I like what Mary Baker Eddy said in Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures on page 349, 26 to 28. Mortal thought does not at once catch the higher meaning, and can do so only as thought is educated up to spiritual apprehension. That's the end of the quote. Part of this education process is, like you said, you capitalize words that make reference to the divine creation, and when they are still making reference to the secondary mortal human mental recreation, then we use the lowercase.
Now about the word wishing, like if we want to wish somebody good luck. So let's talk about why we want to try to stay away from that.
Wishing somebody good luck is implying that there is the possibility of bad luck. And if we are living in the knowledge of the divine creation, the one can't be divided into two nor reduced to zero. I really like what Joel Goldsmith said. I'll read this. To believe that God is a power over evil, to believe that evil has an existence, and then we either must believe God to be the cause and creator of it, or we must accept another cause or creator, and the acceptance of any other cause or creator does away with omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. That's the end of his quote. And then to further reinforce the ramifications to wishings, I have something here from Mary Baker Eddy, Science and Health, page 169, and I'll read it. I name these facts to show that disease has a mental, mortal origin, that faith in rules of health or in drugs begets and fosters disease by attracting the mind to the subject of sickness, by exciting fear of disease, and by dosing the body in order to avoid it. The faith reposed in these things should find stronger supports and a higher home. If we understood the control of mind over body, we should put no faith in material means. End of quote. So more and more for me, I'm starting to see the belief in the two powers. Like we said, when you divide the one into two, that division, that separation is what begins the downward spiral of this false existence that we accept as real. And so wishing is just reinforcing we're not in the divine creation.
And of course, I hear the word wishing, reminds me of all the songs, especially the Disney song that comes on, World of Disney, it's a wishing upon a star. And so even as a young girl, we thought that that was what we did. You wished upon a star, which I think meant you were wishing to God for something.
Yeah, and this is the kind of thinking that we're trying to come out of. The old theology that God made everything, good and bad, and that God is giving and at the same time taking away. And what we were calling God turns out to be the law of karma, material law. And it's not the divine creation. And thanks to Mary Baker Eddy's discovery of Christian Science, she was really able to unbox the teachings of the Christ brought forth by Jesus. We find it's not something that you just believe in and then hope to get a reward after you expire, but it is a demonstrable principle. It is something that once you know it, then you start to let it live through you, as you, and because Spirit is perfect, and when Spirit is cause, creation is perfect, then we're able to externalize not my will, not the human mental recreation, which is a mix of good and evil, but we bring forth the divine creation, which is absolute harmony, absolute perfection.
So let's explain more about the limitations of believing in these two powers, and specifically how this behavior prevents spiritual law, which you've been talking about.
As we start to understand this, you start to see the divine creation is right here. It's right now, but we must be conscious of it. Now, all we have to do is look at our experiences. Consciousness is experience, and if we are experiencing suffering, sickness, disease, lack, or limitation, we must know that these are not divine qualities. So we can't be conscious of the divine creation and experiencing these limitations. Spiritual law is a demonstrable principle. And the fact it's backed by science, we did that one radio show when we talked about von Neumann's chain, that things will remain in a certain appearance or pattern until they are met by something that is not bound by the same rules. What we're calling reality is observation dependent, and it is the observer that sets the measurement for what's called the collapse of the wave function. How we think is what we become. Now, spiritual law dispels material law, just like light dispels darkness. Darkness is not an opposing power to light, it's the absence of light. And the same is true here. Material law really isn't an opposing power to light, it's the absence of spiritual law. It's the absence of awareness of the divine creation. And what we need to do, it's like we said, we need to awake, we need to rise, we need to know and let the divine creation express itself through us. And the minute that we interfere with that by thinking with our five sense mind, which works on the belief in two powers, we negate spiritual law because we are ignorant of it. It is absent.
Well, we are going to pause right here to hear a word from our sponsor. So listeners, we'll be back with you in just a few moments.
Snow. Let's move. Or, it's like you wake up one morning, it's like, you know what? I'm tired.
Kriya Yoga Theory 2 is a unique and revolutionary practice and forum designed to facilitate the growth process in human development. Apotheosis is a real experience and has an evidence procedure. You cannot lead someone to permanent change by doing for them what they must do themselves. Personal accountability and responsibility are the foundation of Kriya Yoga Theory 2. You must be engaged and devoted. Prana power brings virtue to overcome fear, wisdom to overcome ignorance, purpose to overcome selfishness, enthusiasm to overcome laziness. Kriya Yoga is a path of action, knowledge, and devotion. These sessions are a celestial positioning system to guide the individual into union with the divine. For more information or to sign up for your next session online, go to www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste. Welcome back. For those who are just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, I think we should be talking now about discussing the two-part process of rejecting the false and affirming the truth.
We had said the one can't be divided into two, nor reduced to zero. And so, in this process, we can't just reject the testimony of our material senses. You can't just say that there is no evil, because you're not presenting something that is not bound by the same rules. That kind of reminds me of, we've talked about this, Gandhi's passive resistance, when those people would be walking up to the British soldiers and being clubbed and knocked down. Now, they're rejecting the British authority, but what they're not doing is affirming the truth. They're not working with a principle, because if they were working with divine law, they could not be clubbed down. And that's why we say it can't be divided into two, which is a belief in good and bad, but at the same time, it can't be reduced to zero. It's not no self, it's one self. It is the one perfect divine life, the divine creation. That's the truth that we want to affirm. Life is perfect, it's whole, it's complete. And not just say that, not just believe that, but know that to be true to the extent that you are proving the presence of the divine creation. That's what's very different about the work that Mary Baker Eddy did. She was proving the presence of the divine creation. She wasn't just talking about it or believing in it. And that's what we're learning. And the way that we do that is by educating our thought up to spiritual apprehension.
So could you give us an example of what it looks like to reject the false and what it looks like to affirm the truth?
In rejecting the testimony of your senses, and I really like what Mary Baker Eddy said in Science and Health, page 144. I'll read it. The more material a belief, the more obstinately tenacious its error. The stronger are the manifestations of the corporeal senses, the weaker the indications of soul. See, we know the physical world now is a mental image, but what we're learning is that the more divinely mental the image, the more harmonious and indestructible it will appear. It really comes down to, what is it that I believe in? What is it that I identify with? What is it that I know about myself that is true? And what is it that I know is false? But if I start to know that what is appearing in my material senses is my thought about what's really here, which is the divine creation. So in affirming the truth, starting with the divine creation means we begin to accept that life is perfect now, and there isn't anything you can do humanly that is better than what God is doing spiritually. By accepting and living in the knowledge of the divine creation, we are doing more than we could ever do humanly. And spirit being a demonstrable principle. By allowing yourself to be completely vulnerable, we get the opportunity to demonstrate the strength of our faith. However, I love what Mary Baker Eddy said in Miscellaneous Writings. For Jesus to walk the water was scientific, insomuch as he was able to do this, but it is neither wisdom nor science for poor humanity to step upon the Atlantic until we can walk on the water. End of the quote. So again, we know it's a demonstrable principle, but until we are conscious of that and we're proving it with scientific certainty, we have to educate our thought up to this. It's like anything. Nobody can just sit down at a piano and begin to play it. Or those that can, they do that. But those that can't, they have to take lessons. And so if we aren't born with this revelation, then of course we can educate ourselves up to it. Just like you can learn to play the piano, you can learn to demonstrate the presence of the divine creation, and these are the ways that we go about doing it.
I like what you said earlier when you said there isn't anything you can do humanly that is better than what God is doing spiritually. So it seems like what we're doing in the physical world, God has already done everything and it's already perfect. So technically, we really don't have to do anything.
And isn't that what Scripture tells us? Scripture says, know the truth and it will make you free. It doesn't say do the truth. It doesn't say think the truth. It says know the truth. And here's what we're learning is what knowing means spiritually. To know the truth doesn't mean that you think the truth or you believe the truth. You know the truth, and by knowing that truth, it makes you free, and it makes you free from the law of karma. It makes you free from the belief in two powers. And then it opens you up to a whole different way of living.
Let me just make sure I got this correct. So when we affirm the truth, we are, what you said earlier, accepting and living in the knowledge of the divine creation.
That's a nice little phrase, rolls off of your tongue. Accepting and living in the knowledge of the infinite divine creation takes care of whatever it is that is appearing in our material senses. But a word to the wise here is spirit testifies with deeds, not words. Not all that glitters is gold. Not all that is called truth or spiritual is truth or spirit. Again, I really like what Mary Baker Eddy said in Science and Health, page 552. But thought loosened from a material basis, but not yet instructed by science, may become wild with freedom and so self-contradictory. End of quote.
Swami, let's talk a bit more about educating thought. Those are two words that we don't usually put together.
Right, and why we want to educate thought up to spirit. Again, coming back to Mary Baker Eddy, Science and Health, page 415. I'll read it. To remove the ever-producing disorder, you must calm and instruct mortal mind with immortal truth. End of quote. And so what she was doing and what we're learning is educated up into a new way of thinking to demonstrate a better existence than the one we are accepting now. And I have something else here from Joel S. Goldsmith that I'll read. Too many Occidentals believe that the mystical life is not only impractical, but largely a figment of the imagination. In this age, however, the way of mysticism is being shown to be not something mythical, mysterious, or occult, but spiritual, and a far more practical way of life than any yet devised in the human realm. It changes life from the everyday humdrum human experience with its trials and tribulations and its ups and downs to an entirely different kind of life, one lived from within, and yet not lived by us, but rather lived through us, a life in which we pass from living by taking thought and by our own effort to living by the Spirit, end of quote. And so here we're really starting to learn, man says, show and I will trust, and God says, trust and I will show. And the more that we can rely on this, and we start to see when Spirit is cause, creation is perfect. And then you start to prove that, not just say it.
So as you were talking, it reminded me of the earlier quote that you had said by Mary Baker Eddy, which was, if we understood the control of mind, with a capital M, over body, we should put no faith in material means. And I think what's interesting here is the word faith in that quotation as well. We hadn't even gotten to that today.
Right. And I think this is all part of what we're learning, is this educating thought up to spiritual apprehension. We believe in the divine creation. Then faith, like James said, faith without works is dead. Faith is really expansion of your belief to where you're not just believing in something, but it is starting to show you. Faith is demonstrating your belief in the divine creation, until eventually we get to that point where Mary Baker Eddy calls understanding, where we are now demonstrating divine law with scientific certainty, because we are stepping out from the influence of mortal mind. And like she says here, if we understood the control of mind with a capital M over body, when mind takes over the scientific government of the body, this is all part of that revelation, the realization there is only one life. It's perfect, it's whole, it's complete. And that light will dispel the belief, I am a separate, finite, mortal being with an expiration date.
So we should stop putting so much emphasis on our physical bodies and what we think of our physical bodies then.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what we mean when we say living in the knowledge of the infinite spiritual body. The whole thing of the body of Christ, the infinite spiritual body, which is the real, the true, and not the appearance, not the human mental concept of that divine truth. But we're approaching our lives with a belief in the false sense of existence, the material appearance, ignorant of the presence of the divine creation, which is unchanging, perfect, whole. And that's what we're learning, educating thought up to this spiritual apprehension, that I'm not a finite mortal being, but I am the reflection of the divine. I'm the expression of an indestructible principle. But I can't be thinking about this finite mortal body and at the same time have awareness for the divine creation. And that's what we're learning. Stop thinking, start knowing. By making your mind an avenue of awareness for the presence of the divine creation. And in silence and in stillness, we watch, we wait, we let. That's what she means when she says, if we understood the control of mind over body. So it's not my will, not this false personal sense of who I think I am, but it is the divine will. And I can't have a belief in me as a finite mortal being and accepting myself to be the infinite spiritual body.
Well, it's that time to start breaking down our show for today. So listeners, be sure to visit the website, www.ipdtransform.com. On the homepage, you see the fading banner Blog Talk Radio. If you click that, that directs you to the Blog Talk Radio Show catalog page. And then by clicking on the Products tab, the online classes directs you to all the classes that Swami has available for you. So with that, Swami, do you have any other final thoughts about today's program?
Well, I would like to encourage people to join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance, get the light in your soul, and channel the divine creation. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton, along with Swami Jayananda, signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.